We've got the president of the John Birch Society here on a Texas tour. Before we run out of time, and he will be here 15 minutes in the next hour, tell us about the speaking dates. You've already done some that you have left in Texas, and the hotels those are being held at for folks that want to come learn more.
Well, tonight I'll be in San Antonio at the Embassy Suites, and I think that's on the north side of town. And then Friday night I'll be at the Richardson Civic Center in Richardson, Texas, right outside Dallas. And in about a month, I come back, and I'm going to speak in Lubbock and Midland and Amarillo. But I don't know where. But you can find that out by going to jbs.org, and the information's all there.
They can just go to JBS events and see where the president's speaking.
Correct.
And then you're pretty much a year round doing speaking engagements. So there's, no matter where you are in the country, throughout the year, you generally get to close to where folks are at.
That's right. I do a lot of traveling. My wife's favorite phrase to me is, have a nice trip.
Yeah, that's what my wife says to me. She says, bye, see ya.
Have a nice trip, right? Right.
You know, we do sacrifice seeing our families as much as we like, which is the most important thing in the world, because I know I have a passion. I know you have a passion. There's so much evidence. There's so much globalist takeover going on. I mean, people think sometimes I exaggerate. It's the opposite. There's too much evidence to cover it all.
Well, there certainly is enough evidence for anybody who wants to take the time to look. And so then what do? You find out that your country is being converted into a socialist system. Even Newsweek magazine said, we are all socialists now. Oh, there it is, yeah. And we've been saying that for a long, long time. What is socialism? Socialism is control by government. Simple. It's economic control, but of course if you have economic control, it follows. And if you don't like what's happening with the economic control, you start a Gestapo, you start a police state, you can do all kinds of things. And that's where what we face. Now, one of the things that I like to say is that you go down to Washington today and you talk to senator, congressman, president, anybody else. They say, look, we're in an economic downturn and government has to do something. No. The opposite is what needs to be done. Government has to undo things. They have to undo all kinds of things they never should have started in the first place. Obama has announced that there's going to be a $1.75 trillion deficit this fiscal year. And a day after he announced that, he announced a $51 billion foreign aid program. Now, I say if you go to a fourth grader and you ask him if you're heavily in debt, should you give away money, the fourth grader would say, no, of course not. And I think sometimes we need fourth graders in Congress. You know.
Yeah, the common sense isn't there, but they know what they're doing. Like, they use our money against us. Now, you mentioned this earlier, but it's key that you and others are on record laying out their blueprint. You weren't looking into a crystal ball. You were studying their own documents. Tell us about your book in the early 90s, dealing with economic terrorism, because that's what they're doing now. They engineer the crisis. They bring it in. They say, give us the banker bailout, which is really a banker takeover, or there'll be a depression, then things get worse. They say, okay, give us stimulus packages, give us more banker control, or there'll be a depression. Then we give them more control, and the same thing over and over again. Break down specifically your book and your predictions and what we're now in the process of seeing.
Well, the book did a lot of research about what is money and what was the Constitution's position regarding money. And then one chapter is called Karl Marx Would Have Loved the Fed. Get into all of that. How do we get out of it? And we got out of it at the end of the book. I started talking about the fact that government ought to sell a lot of its holdings. If 13 Western states, more than 50% of it is owned by the federal government, then they ought to sell it. Sell the land, they can start paying off the national debt. But the national debt is going so far out of sight today, it's a little bit hard to even imagine. You wonder if they're ever going to be able to pay the national debt. Now, my book is called Financial Terrorism. Unfortunately, it's out of print. I went through 2 printings, but now people are coming back, and some people have dragged it out and reread it, said it's more applicable today than it was when I wrote it in 1993. So, yeah, we're in favor of that. One of the points I'm making in my speech is to contrast. It's really not contrast as much as it is compare. What happened in Japan way back in the late 80s and into the early 90s. During the late 80s, Japan was boomtown. Japan was piling up all kinds of wealth, and Japan was going to overtake everybody, and there was all kinds of information about this all over the place. In fact, Japan, even at that point, bought Rockefeller Center. I don't know whether you remember that. they had to pay it back. They had to give it back, sell it back afterwards. But in 1992, their bubble burst, and housing prices went down 80%, and the Nikkei Stock Exchange went down 2/3. Right? So what did the government do in Japan? They did exactly what we are doing in America.
Stay there. We're going to come back. Long segment, plenty of time to go over this. Then I want to throw out some of the current policies. National compulsory service, open borders, restrictions on the Second Amendment. The establishment is clearly making its biggest move ever against freedom. Instead of going incrementally, they've launched the blitzkrieg attack on freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the Obama Deception is on sale now on DVD at Infowars.com. Mr. McManus, president of the John Birch Society, I tried to give you a copy of the Obama Deception when you got here, but somebody had gotten you one of the internet burn copies, which we appreciate, but we've given you a copy now. I don't really know what your review of it is, so this will be virgin ground for me here. But what is your take on the Obama Deception?
Well, there's a lot of good information in there. There's a lot of information the American people need to know. I don't doubt that a bit. I watched it on a little thing I have on a plane ride, and I watched it on that, and of course I wasn't taking notes or anything. I was just, so I want to go back and study it some more. But there's an awful lot in there that the American people need to know about the man who is now in the White House.
Well, what we attempt to do is what you guys have always done. Can we stop looking at the little puppets right here? Can we look past them to the puppet master? Finish up your story about financial terrorism, the Japan.
Well, what happened in Japan? It's really stunning. Japan, their bubble burst in 1992, and so the government decided that it had to do something. So what did it do? Well, first thing it did was it printed a lot more money. Now, keep in mind that what happened in Japan is what is being done now to treat a similar problem here in our country. They nationalized some industries. They gave all kinds of stimulus packages. They did everything we're doing here in America, and 17 years later, they're still in their recession. And you go back to the Great Depression and then go to the 30s, and you can see that everything that was done by Hoover and then by Roosevelt, who tripled what Hoover had been doing, it kept us in the Depression. It didn't get us out of the Depression, and this is what's happening here today. Everything that government is doing is wrong. They should not do it. And one of the things that we like to say, a principle of the free enterprise system, is that governments or organizations that fail should be allowed to fail. And why should the American people bail out AIG and Citibank and some corporations and automobile producers and so forth? Agencies and governments shouldn't be doing that.
Well, more than just that, though. From our perspective, they failed. From our perspective, they're screwing up and it's wrong. But if you, as you know, read the globalist documents, the Club of Rome, CFR, Trilateral Commission, they build these bubbles, get everybody overextended in debt, and then implode them to get more power and control, as government did during the Depression, as is what's happening in Japan. So can you specifically speak to the fact and give us your take on how they're using the crisis they created to now openly set up world government?
Well, everything you see coming out of Washington is more regulation, more spending, more tax on the freedom of the American people. And was it Rahm Emanuel who said a crisis is a terrible thing to waste? And so you either create a crisis or you take advantage of a crisis, and then you come out. The answer to the crisis is more power, more government power. Now, in this case, we're seeing all kinds of suggestions for global power. We're seeing suggestions for IMF to issue the money. We're seeing suggestions for global regulation. We're going to lose our country. We're going to lose the Declaration of Independence. We're going to lose the Constitution of the United States. We say to people, look, please, shake yourself. Wake up. All right? Get involved. Help us. Join the John Birch Society. Call us JBS USA 1 or get on the internet, jbs.org. We're glad to hear from anybody. And we're certainly glad to go on radio shows and television shows anywhere that people are saying the same kind of thing, and we'll lend support, and we support each other, I guess, just to try to save our country.
Well, you have invaluable monthly magazine, and it's just always...
Oh, no, every second week, not monthly.
That's right, every 2 weeks. It is just invaluable information, so well documented, and folks can also go to the website and...
Get the New American Magazine, right. The New American Magazine will supply anybody with the nuts and bolts information that you need. And there's a lot of people in our country who say, well, there's something wrong here. I don't like the Federal Reserve, but they don't know why. They don't have the nuts and bolts. You go to our magazine, you get the nuts and bolts. Right.
I want to go back and focus on this, though. We have hundreds of mainstream news articles now admitting world government, saying it'll be a world government, a bank of the world. Time and Newsweek with headlines like New World Order saying it'll be a new bank of the world that sets interest rates and sets currency values and knocks the heads of bad people and that will pay carbon taxes to. This whole Malthusian move. I mean, this is a totally controlled economy. And that is not a free market. This international banking elite are monopoly men. So can you speak to the type of world government they're now publicly setting up, and then explain to folks in your own way that they keep claiming the free market has failed. This hasn't been the free market. This has been banksters using government to create monopolies.
That's right. Well, you know, you've said it. I don't have to.
I mean, in your own words, though, because I've seen you give speeches on it. I want you to lay it out.
Well, what you see is taking advantage of crisis. And the answer is always more government regulation.